Right, so after 2 months of not sewing, it's time for a comeback, and we're gonna do it with a I See It, I Want It birthday dress edition. Right, so what happened in the last couple of months? I have been busy with lots of different things. I've been writing on my book, I have been working, I have had a lot of social outings. I've done a little bit of sewing, but I've not really shared much of it, which is a bit of a shame. My bangs is a little too short. You know, that's the woes of having it cut by a hairdresser. But I'm back. We are going to do my birthday dress. And like I said, it's gonna be a I See It, I Want It edition. So this dress right here is Reformation. I have seen a gazillion versions of this dress from different brands in the last couple of months, and I really like it because it's so simple and so striking. I think the special thing about it is that the back has a scoop neck / waterfall back opening, so it's like revealing in the back but very modest in the front, if that makes sense. And I have this most gorgeous blue satin, a dusty blue. I find that I reach for blues quite a lot, especially when it's precious fabrics, because I just think it looks so gorgeous. So I'm gonna use this fabric, and I'm going to use my Jackie dress pattern, yes, to make this dress. And the first thing I need to do is to adapt the pattern. So let's do it. Okay, so basically what I did with my sewing pattern is that I traced the back of it, and then I pivoted it so that it flares out along the back neckline, and that is so that I can get a straight edge, which once the shoulders are put in position onto your actual shoulder apex, you will have a beautifully draped waterfall back neckline. That was the idea that I started out with, and I took it through some iterations from there. The front, I basically just traced the way as is. I just migrated my darts from the waist into the bust area, and what I decided to do is to have the bust dart a little bit offset so that the apex of the bust dart doesn't sit on the apex of my actual bust, and that is just because I'm working with satin and that tends to look a little bit strange. So that's why I made that decision. Okay, so we have a prototype, and the front looks pretty good, I want to say. Front looks pretty much like it's supposed to. I could take it in just a smidge to remove this situation here. I don't want to use that. Sleeve looks fine. Now the back. The back is a bit of a situation. Obviously this looks messy because I just put this here to keep it together, but it's overall much too large. So what I've done here is I have a tie also in the waist, which is what snatches it from the front. This is why it looks like this. If I let it loose, it would just be like a nightgown. But we have way too much volume back here. So I'm thinking I can probably take this much off the sewing pattern. So it's gonna look a bit crazy, I think, because it's really, the sewing pattern is gonna look like this narrow because it's cut in the bias, it stretches, right? So I'm gonna take that in on the sewing pattern, and I'm thinking, I think I like the depth of the waterfall neckline in the back, because this way I can still wear a normal bra rather than having to do some sort of stick-on situation, because you can't see anything, any straps or anything this way. But I think if I make the back more narrow, I think it's gonna look nice. I think that can work. And then once it's like properly sewn and all the edges are nice and everything, and we have both sleeves in, I think it's gonna look quite a bit like the Reformation dress. So this was a good prototype, and it was necessary that I made one because if I would have ended up with this from my actual fabric, I think I would be a little bit annoyed. But now I can make the changes that I need to make, which is really just make the back smaller. I think everything else looks fine to me. The next version of the dress was supposed to be the final one, but I clearly didn't think the process through because I did not consider how I wanted to finish the dress, disregarding facing or lining options, which is such a beginner mistake. And that basically led to this just being another prototype. Did I just end up with the perfect fit? I think I might have. I'm obviously wearing my jeans down here, but hold on. I mean, and that's without any ties tied up on the inside. I don't think I will need any ties actually, not even up here. I actually made some adjustments to the pattern after the prototype, which were basically all around making sure that I could finish the dress nicely, meaning I mirrored the back down until the waistline as an attached facing, and I cut the front of the dress to the same point a second time to use it to overturn my neckline in the front. This also nicely gave me a reinforcement in the bust area, so I think technically small-chested girlies could wear this dress without a bra. Alright, so step number 1 is to fetch the front of the dress as well as the facing for the front of the dress. And what I'm going to do first is to put my bust darts in. The bust darts are a little bit offset, and that is because this is a bias dress that's supposed to be made with satin, and satin has the tendency to show every little thing. And I thought to myself that the tip of the bust dart on the apex of the bust might be a little bit too on the nose, so I've set it off a little bit so it kind of ends on the side of the bust rather than on the apex. And I'm hoping that that kind of makes it a little bit more inconspicuous. It's also on a 45-degree angle, so hopefully there shouldn't be any tugging or warping going on. I have marked the 2 arms and I have marked the end of the bust dart. It's also a very narrow, small bust dart. It really is just there to give a little bit of shape, nothing insane, nothing crazy going on here. And what I like to do is to put the piece so that I'm starting from the 2 legs of the dart basically, and I work myself towards the tip. I never start at the tip. And instead of backstitching, I just tie up my loose threads, because if I backstitch there might also be a little bit of a tip building, and we don't want that here. So I'm just separating the bobbin thread from the top thread, and then I tie it up twice to secure it. This is something you can do generally if you want a super clean finish, no matter what fabric you're working with. Okay, so that's the first one. The most important part is to give your darts a really nice, good press to get a finish that is clean and inconspicuous and worthy of your final product. Okay, so now that I have pressed my darts, I have serged the lower edge of my front facing, and now we can actually go ahead and merge all of our pieces. And that is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, because we have our back piece which has the facing attached, and that is so that the waterfall opening in the back has a beautiful finish that you don't need to sew or do anything with, right? So technically speaking, these are the shoulders, and you have a beautifully finished waterfall in the back that doesn't need anything really. And the next thing I'm going to do probably is serge the waist here in the facing area of the back piece, just as I have done with the front. So this is what the inside looks like, right? We have our armholes right here, we have our shoulder seams right here. So now that I've prepared the back like that, I'm going to put it aside for a second and focus on the front. We have our front outside and we have our front facing, and the facing needs to go right sides touching so we can sew our neckline. That is the first thing I will do. So I'm simply placing it right sides touching, and then I sew 1 centimeter from the edge so that I can overturn it and have a nice clean finish on the outside. Before I take it to my iron, I'm going to nip the seam allowance and the curves like so there is no warping or tension in the seam. Okay, so now we have a beautifully finished neckline. Looks like this. happy with that. Now we can put the front and the back together. So again, I am going to fetch my back piece with my shoulder seams like this, and I'm going to place the shoulder seams open on top of each other. So basically I'm fanning them out like this, placing them right sides touching. And this way we're going to have a beautifully finished shoulder seam that needs no serging or other types of finishes whatsoever, giving us beautifully done shoulders. So again, opening both front and back, placing it like so. And what I do now is basically sew this V shape to close the shoulder, making sure I catch the fabric in the notch that I've placed right here. Okay, now that that is done, ideally, when I now turn this over, I have a beautifully finished shoulder. This is the inside, and equally this is the outside, and there is no seam allowance. Right, so now I need to press this. Okay, so this is where we are so far. This is obviously the inside of the dress, but you can nicely see the facing in the front as well as the facing in the back. So that's what the inside looks like. And now I can put together the side seams, and then we have the base of the dress already done. It's a really quick make, so I'm happy about that. All right, easy peasy. We are now going to pin together front and back, and we want to make sure that everything aligns nicely. So these are the seams that I am in fact going to serge later. And the back facing currently is a little bit longer than the front. Okay, so this is the dress so far without the sleeves, and I am pretty chuffed about this. I think it looks rather good. Now, I have obviously changed fabric along the way, and the previous version, the mock-up version, was definitely more of a dusty blue, which I like this color, but strangely, when I look at myself in the mirror, I kind of feel this paler version looks better, which I know is a bit counterintuitive because I'm very pale, and usually pale on pale doesn't look that good. But I don't know, this stronger blue isn't it. I feel like this is nicer. Maybe it's because I feel like this crepe satin is nicer than the satin, just straight up satin, because it just looks a little bit more luxe, it looks a bit heavier, and overall just a little bit more expensive, maybe. Obviously the finishes are much nicer on this one than here. Here I just did the rolling hem, and that looks a bit shoddy. But also this one creases very easily. So you might be able to tell here in the back, even though I ironed this last night, I do feel like this one looks a little bit more put together. So the next thing I will do is to put the sleeves on. But technically speaking, I feel like you could make this dress without the sleeves. That's totally a thing. Okay, now to the sleeves. Sleeves are also cut on the bias. They're just very simple, symmetrical pieces. So we just need to fold them in half and pin and sew the inner sleeve seam, as well as serge it straight away. So I've already inserted one of the sleeves. Once this is pressed and finished on the inside, it should look really nice and smooth. And I'm going to show you how I place that into the armhole. So I'm fetching the leftover sleeve in this case, and I'm just turning it right sides out. That's the first thing I'll do. I am placing my piece so that I have good access to the armhole. And then I go ahead and I place the sleeve inseam onto the side seam of the dress, but then I set it off into the front. So instead of putting it dead center on top of each other, I'm doing this because multiple things. We are moving our arms forwards rather than backwards, so that helps with the motion. And then also this area here is more flat than having both the seam allowance and the two layers of the upper side of the dress as well as the sleeve all in one place. Then I would have a bulk in my armpit, and this way it's better. So I'm just securing it right here, and then I'm placing just one pin towards front, as well as one pin towards the back. Then I am pivoting, grabbing my shoulder apex, there's a notch right here, placing it right sides touching with the shoulder, and then I turn everything inside out like so. And now I have good access to pin the wrist of the sleeve. Now what I am doing here is, because I have pivoted my sleeve towards the front, I'm going to pivot the shoulder apex slightly to the back, just to even that out, just by half a centimeter or centimeter. And then I can start with the front side of the sleeve. I'm going to ease my shoulder apex of the sleeve into the armhole, and by easing it in I mean placing lots of pins and stretching the armhole slightly more than I would the apex of the shoulder in the sleeve. And this way any ease that is in the sleeve is going to be pinned away, and it's going to be invisible without us having to worry about any pleats in our seams or anything like that. If you end up with lots of ease and you don't quite know where it's coming from, just pin back and forth a few times and you will find that it just disappears after a couple of goes. And especially in the lower half of the armhole down here, that stretches more than up here, for example. And so if you find ease, you can distribute it towards the lower half of the armhole. Right, so this is what that looks like. You can see a little bit of a wave going on here, but since you're sewing about a centimeter towards the inside, you're not going to catch those waves. And if you're feeling insecure, you can go ahead and baste this, try it on, press it, do your thing, and if you're still unsure, you can make it readjustments. But overall, this should work out well. So now I can put it into my sewing machine. Okay, we're done. Final touches is simply to do the hem and the cuffs. So basically I decided, because I really don't want to lose any length around my skirt, I really want to keep the hem to a minimum. Same for the cuff. I simply serged it, and that is because it looks clean. It is just half a centimeter of length lost, and now I'm simply going to fold that over and top stitch it from the outside for a clean finish. Same with the hem, then it's pressed and then it's done. Alternatively, you could of course do a rolling hem, would look just as nice. This is really up to you. Alright, and that is the final version of the dress. What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I am considering making this into a purchasable sewing pattern in the new year for me to sell on my Etsy shop, with the option of a longer skirt with maybe a train, because I can definitely see this dress without sleeves, in a long beautiful satin bias cut. I think this would make a beautiful occasion wear gown. I am going to put up a poll on my community page, so if you have a minute, please head there to vote. And that is it for today. Thanks as always for spending the time with me, and I see you next time. Bye bye.